A few days ago, Max Crosby, the star pass rusher for the Las Vegas Raiders, released a podcast where he responded to comments made by Myles Garrett. In his response, Max shared his own frustrations about the Raiders and their current situation. At first, I didn't think much of it, but as more people started talking about it, I began to realize that Max Crosby might not finish his career with the Raiders. There's even a real chance he could be traded within the next season or two if the team doesn't start having success. Last Friday, Myles Garrett was asked by the media about his thoughts on the Cleveland Browns. He said he wanted the team to win a Super Bowl, and he wanted to be the one to help them get there. But he also pointed out that after 10 years in the league, the Browns still haven't reached that goal. He's given it his all, but things are still not where they should be. The Browns aren't in the Super Bowl race right now. Max Crosby responded by saying he felt the same way. Every year, the Raiders go through big changes, coaches leave, and one year they have a great defensive line, only for it to fall apart the next. He shared his frustrations, and I want you to listen to what he had to say. Then we can discuss it further. Max Crosby also talked about the struggles he's faced over the years with constant changes. He mentioned how it feels like every year there's a new coach, new teammates, and just when he thinks the team is getting good, players are gone the next season. He said it's tough because he can relate to Myles Garrett's situation. Max also shared that his contract situation is tricky, with no guaranteed money left, and there are a lot of things to figure out in the future. He's looking forward to having those tough conversations and getting to work in the off-season. Max also took a moment to talk about how much he appreciates the Raiders fans. He said that from day one, the fans have supported him, especially through injuries, and it's meant a lot to him. Despite everything, he feels embraced by them, and that's been one of the best parts of his journey. Max said a lot more in his podcast, and I really recommend checking it out for the full conversation. You can tell that Max Crosby truly wants to win, and he wants to do it with the Raiders, if that's even possible. We also have to remember that the Raiders have struggled for the last 20 years. It's been tough, and I know Max Crosby is doing his best to change things, but there are bigger issues with the Raiders that sometimes feel impossible to fix. Some people say it started with Al Davis, and now it's Mark Davis, who's often criticized for being a bad owner who doesn't really know what he's doing. One of the main problems the Raiders face is that they haven't solved what I think is the real issue. Maybe things will get better with the new general manager Tom Telesco, but if we look back, the Raiders did have some good moments. Reggie McKenzie was hired as GM years ago, and he made some solid moves. Under his leadership, the Raiders seemed to be on the right path. But then, after moving on from Dennis Allen, the Raiders hired Jack Del Rio, and things were looking up. But then, Mark Davis made another change. He decided that the team needed a new direction and moved away from Reggie McKenzie. Instead of firing McKenzie right away, they waited until after Jack Del Rio was fired, and then they let him go. The Raiders have had a lot of changes since then, with different coaches and general managers coming and going. It's been a story of constant inconsistency. The Raiders have struggled with consistency, and that's been a big problem. One thing they could do moving forward is give Tom Telesco a chance to build the team over the next 5 or 6 years. Let him work on it without constant changes. This could give the Raiders a real shot at winning, but right now, things are still up in the air. Max Crosby spoke about his commitment to the team, and while he didn't say it in the clips, he mentioned in his full podcast how he wakes up at 5 a.m. every day and works hard. He puts in everything he has, but despite all that effort, winning just isn't happening right now. He also addressed the rumors about him being traded. He said that it's possible, and he's earned the right to be in those talks. Now, do I think he'll actually be traded? Probably not, but it's still interesting that Max brought it up. He also talked about contract negotiations coming up this offseason, mentioning that there's no guaranteed money left. I looked at Max Crosby's contract, and it's true. There's nothing guaranteed for 2025 and 2026, which is surprising considering how big of a player he is. While the Raiders aren't likely to move on from him, they do have the option to do so after 2025. If they wanted to, they could let him go. I'm not saying the Raiders should trade Max Crosby, though. In fact, I think they should renegotiate his contract and make sure he's truly happy. The problem is, right now, Max's contract is way below what other top players are making. For example, Nick Bosa is getting $34 to $35 million a year, and Micah Parsons will probably break those numbers soon. but Maxx Crosby is only making around $26 million a year for the next 2 years, and that doesn't make sense. The Raiders are going to have to give Max a raise for the next couple of years, extend his contract beyond that, and include a lot of guaranteed money. I also think that's part of why Mark Davis is selling parts of the team. He realizes that to keep guys like Maxx Crosby, he'll have to give them more guaranteed money. It won't just be Max either. Players like Amari Cooper, Nate Hobbs, and others who are having success will need new contracts. Even younger guys like Jackson, Par Johnson, and Brock Bowers will need to be paid in a couple of years. The Raiders are going to have to invest a lot of money in these players to keep them around. Maxx Crosby's frustration isn't just about losing or the inconsistency. It's about the fact that he's not being rewarded for his hard work and dedication. And that's what makes it all so difficult for him. I really feel for Maxx Crosby because, as a Raiders fan, it's been so frustrating to watch the team over the years. Just when it seems like they're close to success, they make decisions that don't make sense. It's like they're almost there, but then something goes wrong. The truth is, there is a clear way for the Raiders to win long term. It's not that hard, and other teams have figured it out. For example, since the Raiders drafted Derek Carr, the Chicago Bears have drafted 4 quarterbacks in the first round. After all that effort, they finally found a solid quarterback. Teams like the Patriots have also drafted 2 quarterbacks in the past few years to build for the future. To succeed, you need to invest in the quarterback position with a first-round pick, and the Raiders haven't done that since 2014. Even then, it wasn't a first-round pick, but a second-round pick. It's not just about getting a good quarterback, though. You also need to find a good coach. Jack Del Rio was solid for the Raiders, and John Gruden had his moments too. But looking back, Josh McDaniels and Antonio Pierce were bad choices. Maybe Antonio Pierce can turn things around, but it's clear the Raiders need the right coach to build a winning team. At the end of the day, the best coaches are the ones who call plays and manage both sides of the football, offense and defense. Unfortunately, Antonio Pierce doesn't do that. He has an offensive coordinator running the offense and a defensive coordinator handling the defense. If the Raiders want to be successful, they need a coach who can take charge of both sides, along with a solid quarterback to lead the team. I really feel for Maxx Crosby because, right now, the Raiders haven't shown they're willing to make the big investments needed to be a top team. They haven't done what it takes to build a strong, consistent football team. But hopefully, things will change. Maybe Tom Telesco can turn things around with the right draft picks. Hopefully, they can get a good quarterback in the upcoming draft. Some people say if Cam Ward isn't available at pick 1, it doesn't make sense to draft another quarterback. But I think even if they end up with the 4th or 5th pick, they should still consider quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders or Jalen Milroe. Maybe not in the first round, but even in the second round, a quarterback who has potential could make a difference. I don't think either of those 2 quarterbacks would be the answer for the Raiders. They're not good enough to lead the team long term, and without the right quarterback, the Raiders won't have much success. Hopefully, they can get it right and take care of Maxx Crosby by renegotiating his contract. They should not only raise his cap, but also add more guaranteed money. If I were in charge, I'd extend Maxx Crosby's contract for another 2 years, so he'd be with the Raiders through 2028. This would give him more guaranteed money and keep him around for the long term. That seems like the right move. Hopefully, the Raiders can build a winning team, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. I want to know what you think, though. Do you think Maxx Crosby being unhappy means he might leave the Raiders? I know he's a Detroit Lions fan, and with the success they're having, it's gotta be tempting for him. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter saying the Raiders should trade Maxx Crosby, which I think is crazy. But I want to hear your thoughts. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you next time with another video.